I didn't speak up because I was not a writer. Then they came for the students. But I didn't speak up because I was not a student. Then they came for musicians. But I didn't speak up because I was not a musician. And then they came for the Greens, the Muslims, the trade unionists, Christians, and the Jews, the travelers, the homosexuals, the journalists, the artists, the thuggers, the doctors, the philosophers, the economists, the anarchists and the politicians, the nerds, the Europeans, the Americans, the communists, the hackers, illegals, the homeless. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't any of them. Any of them. And then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak up for me.
They're trying to take away your free speech. Censor everything. No more dissent of any kind. Your free press is soon to be a thing of the past. Today I'm going to prove both of these things via Julian Assange and the attempt at the government's disinformation board akin to George Orwell's Ministry of Truth. At the end of the video, I'm going to run a parallel of this book by George Orwell, written in 1949. Please watch the whole video. It can be dense at times, but I promise on the other side, you'll be glad you did. Welcome back to the Post-War Show. All right, everybody, I'm so happy to be with you today. I'm so happy to be talking about a subject of actual consequence here in the real world. So, some of you may not have heard the name Julian Assange, but the fact is the man's a hero. He was willing to and continues to endure incarceration, rapidly declining mentally and physically, for integrity and to raise awareness that we're really going after actual journalists now. This is happening. So I hope that this bothers you. This is the government actively filtering the data till it's just what they want you to hear is all that you can hear. And that should infuriate everybody and terrify everybody. The fact is, Julian's become somewhat of a political chess piece. On the left, you have Hillary Clinton and her influence on the Democratic establishment and their desire to keep Trump from being able to run for president, and that's the big one. And on the right, you have bloodthirsty deep state men like Mike Pompeo.
Cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
If that's what makes a man nut over glory for the American experiment, then that is some villainous shit, is it not? At any rate, this guy's a deep state lifer. These deep staters, they go through administrations. They don't get, voted out. Mike Pompeo hated the fact that Julian Assange made us look so bad, and it's not really about any military risk. It's just saving face and putting fear into others who want to raise awareness. Here's just a few clips.
remind you of the glory of the American experiment.
So, as a consequence of all this fucking bullshit, Julian Assange, who is an honest man, is in this political pinch for doing what he's supposed to do. And you can't do anything but have the utmost respect for that. He was given opportunities by Trump to roll over on a source and he would be pardoned. He refused. I mean, that's Christ-like, dude. Like, I have more admiration for Julian Assange than anybody I've ever met or conceived of meeting pretty much in the world. We need to call our congressmen and women. We need to do whatever we can to raise awareness around this completely unjust issue. And now let me run that proof I was telling you about from Spain and what they've got to say about these assassination plots.
Former US Secretary of State under the Trump administration, has been summoned by a Spanish court to testify on the plot to kidnap WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. The summons was issued on June 3rd by Judge Santiago Pedras of the Audiencia Nacional, a national court of Spain. The summons is part of the ongoing case against security firm UC Global for illegally spying on Assange, allegedly at the behest of the US, while he was seeking asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. The surveillance operation on Assange was undertaken since at least mid-2017, according to testimonies from UC Global whistleblowers and its director David Morales. Discussions were allegedly held at the highest levels of the US government to rendition and assassinate Assange as well.
So, are you not convinced? I mean, really, let's shake off the naivete and try to accept a little reality here, society.
This is a story that shows the bipartisan assault on the Constitution and journalism and a free press. So it wasn't Trump getting in Jim.
WikiLeaks! I love WikiLeaks!
Discussions over kidnapping or killing Assange occurred at the highest levels of the Trump administration, said a former senior counterintelligence official. There seemed to be no boundaries. Senior officials inside the CIA and the Trump administration discussed killing Assange.
This is but a mere sliver of the examples I can give you on how they planned to assassinate. Julian Assange is an actual journalist who uses fact-based, non-biased, no donors, well-sourced journalism from an objective perspective and publishes it through WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks was founded by Julian Assange.
WikiLeaks! I love WikiLeaks!
Julian Assange did not target countries. He published stuff everywhere. He wasn't picking on anybody. I don't think the timing was his intent. The more telling of the information released was that of our military.
For more than 2.5 years, the wire service Reuters has been trying to find out what happened to their 2 staff members on this street in the suburb of New Baghdad. WikiLeaks says this is what happened.
Yep, he's got a weapon too.
I don't see a weapon in there. Do y'all see a weapon in there?
Hotel 26, Crazy Horse 18, have 5 to 6 individuals with AK-47s. We got RPG.
The voice on the tape, presumably a member of the military, says there has been shooting in the area and receives permission to open fire.
Light them all up. Come on, fire! I roger. Keep shooting. God damn it, Kyle. All right, hit him. Oh yeah, look at those dead bastards. Nice. 2-6.
From a distance, you hear the voices on the tape watch as the wounded try to crawl to help. But when help arrives...
This is the equivalent of our EMS service showing up, and this is our response.
Come on, let us shoot. You're engaged. 1-8, engaged. Clear. Come on. Clear. Oh yeah, look at that, right through the windshield.
In this video, I think you see the corruption of pilots and the military by war itself, in particular by the modern nature of aerial warfare. So you see these young pilots acting like they're playing video games.
When your economy is driven by war, blood profits, this is the result.
We go for Yeah.
He ran over a body, probably an innocent civilian.
Even from high above, the harsh reality becomes evident as the troops that arrive find 2 children wounded. You see them carry their small bodies and call for help.
Hey, I need to get the brass to drop ramps. I got a wounded girl. We need to take the rest of mine.
The response on the tape.
Oh, it's their fault for bringing their kids to a battle. That's right.
It's pretty difficult to release data so damning as this without consequence. But during the Obama era, he didn't prosecute Assange because of what was called the New York Times dilemma, and that the New York Times, the Guardian, and the Washington Post all revealed the same information that WikiLeaks did. People have been prosecuted and served time for the intelligence that was given from the Department of Defense. So 3 years ago, the Assange arrest was made.
Again with breaking news for you because London police have arrested WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Here you can see him being dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy by British police.
Hey guys, look, there's a real journalist over there getting arrested for actually being dumb enough to tell the truth. Let's laugh at him because we're propaganda mouthpieces.
You can hear him shouting a little bit that we don't know exactly what he's saying. We are told that Assange is now in a central London police station and he could appear in court in the next hour or two, which of course we will bring to you live.
This is such a fascinating picture, an amazing picture to see, and so much history here. Julian Assange, obviously a central figure in so much of the drama in the United States over the last 8 or 9 years. Of course, WikiLeaks, a central player.
WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks.
And the release of the hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign, part of the Russian attack on the U.S. election.
The Steele dossier. It may be dirty, but it ain't fake.
Obviously, the Steele dossier is discredited by far, actually.
I mean, this is the lunatic response to what is a very rational, evidence-based, fact-based investigation.
FBI pleads guilty to doctoring email.
What the report shows is something that won't be surprising to people that have spent a lot of time in the federal government.
The report left former officials aghast.
The FBI is exonerated today.
It doesn't vindicate anyone at the FBI who touched this.
They are all absolved of any wrongdoing.
The activities we found here don't vindicate anybody.
WikiLeaks also posted classified military information on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Assange spent 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy avoiding extradition.
And a key witness whose testimony was used in the indictment of Julian Assange has admitted to lying. Segedar Thordarson, who was recruited by the United States to build a case against Julian Assange, reportedly misled the U.S. investigators that claiming that he was a close associate of Julian Assange. In 2010, Thordarson had volunteered on a limited basis to raise funds for WikiLeaks.
Say that what Assange did was what journalists do. He exposed malfeasance, crimes committed by a government.
It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
What makes the Assange case vital to what I'm going to show you next is the parallel in time in which the state, while silencing its most adverse critics, it also attempts to silence the dissident voices in the public with the Domestic Violent Extremist Bulletin, which is coming up thanks to Jimmy Dore next, and then another terrorism advisory report that I let Russell Brand deliver after that.
From the National Terrorism Advisory System. What does it say there? It's the summary of terrorism threats to the U.S. homeland. What does it say there? I wonder what it says. Let's see. The United States remains in a heightened threat environment fueled by several factors. What are those factors? Well, an online environment filled with false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories, and other forms of dis, and malinformation, which they call MDM, introduced and or amplified by foreign and domestic threat actors.
Why don't they call it misdismal information?
Why don't they? These threat actors seek to exacerbate social friction, to sow discord, and undermine public trust in government institutions, to encourage unrest, which could potentially inspire acts of violence.
Or truck horn honking, even worse than violence.
Or, which is even worse. So, just so you know now, if you're saying something against the official narrative about COVID or anything about the election, if you talk about election fraud, you are now, you're going to be a terrorist. You're considered, this is the terrorist people. And online filled with falsely. So if they say you're spreading, you're a terrorist. And let's remember, because of Barack Obama's signing of the 2011 NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, it repealed habeas corpus. So all they have to do is say you are a terrorist, and they can put you in jail without charging you with a crime or giving you a day in court. It's called indefinite detention.
Now, I know what he's saying there might sound like total bullshit, right? Oh, you're a terrorist. But terrorist is one of those terms that's almost like an umbrella. You can put an application to it through school, through communication, through so many different avenues besides the traditional 9/11 one that we, Johnny public, tend to gauge, our lens of understanding through. So whenever they start applying it to speech and things like that, it is true that per the Patriot Act, also known as the NDAA, that is a provision in that act that allows the government to detain you with no phone call, no due process whatsoever. They can hold you indefinitely till you die just by adding the word terrorism to any charge, be it dissidence, civil disobedience, you name it. So this is level 1. You're going to be on a list of DMVs, domestic violent extremists. Now, let's see level 2.
Newly been labelled as terrorism by the Department of Homeland Security. So I'm going to speak very carefully now. Let's just be very careful how we talk, because misinformation ain't just now an inconvenience. If you're the wrong person and the misinformation is the wrong type of misinformation, malinformation, disinformation, then you're actually the same as a terrorist. I mean, I remember thinking the word terrorism was getting used in increasingly peculiar ways. Well, now it's actually just being inaccurate. There is a not so subtle push happening right now to increase the Department of Homeland Security's role in combating misinformation. Occasionally I see a news story that reminds me of things that I heard from certain dystopian provocateurs who you won't see on the internet as much these days, who said increasingly nations will be seeking to control information, increase police powers, that we'll be moving into a more and more Orwellian state of affairs.
The main character is a 39-year-old man named Winston. Winston is a low-ranking member of the ruling party, working at the Ministry of Truth. The Ministry of Truth is involved with news media, entertainment, fine arts, education. His purpose is to rewrite history and change the facts to fit the party. This ruling party is a totalitarian government. The face of the party is a man known as Big Brother. In this world, the government has total surveillance over everything you do. The party controls people's news, their perception of reality, their language, even their history. Their propaganda is so crazy that they even have 2 minutes a day where they watch a video of someone that goes against the party, and it's a moment of hate, where they literally just scream at the screen. In this book, the party is forcefully implementing a new inventive language called Newspeak, the official language of Oceania. They change definitions of words, they eliminate words. This way, they prevent political rebellion by eliminating all words related to it. Even thinking rebellious thoughts or having thoughts not aligned with what the party wants is illegal. They call it thought crimes. In this world, people snitch on one another. They're known as the thought police. This thought police are people who are hired by the party to monitor people off screen, to find, to hunt down, and report back to Big Brother. All of these things make Winston dislike the party. And it's obvious why. He lives in a world as a total slave to this tyrannical government system that makes every effort to control your thoughts and your life. Winston is not a sheep to the system. He is a free thinker, which is considered criminal in Oceania.
please go ahead and try to tell me that those similarities are not just absolutely baffling. I mean, for somebody to write that in 1949 it's unbelievable. It's almost like as good as Jefferson saying that the central banks will rise up and the corporations that come up around them will end up making slaves out of the very great-grandchildren that founded this country, which has come to pass. I can actually find a clip of that real quick.
Of our independence, we must not let our rulers load us with perpetual debt. We must make our choice between economy and liberty or profusion and servitude. Wow. I place economy among the first and most important of Republican virtues, and public debt is the greatest of the dangers to be feared. It is incumbent on every generation to pay its own debts as it goes.
We must have a central bank to secure this country's finances.
If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their money, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of their property until their children will wake up homeless on the very continent their fathers conquered.
Jefferson, you're mad. This country will have a central bank.
I mean, haven't we got the right to make mistakes without being regarded as terrorists? I hope so. The White House has begun an extraordinary assault on free speech in America. It's no longer content merely to force social media companies to suppress dissenting views. It appears to be setting the stage to use federal police powers. In its latest terrorism threat bulletin, it listed unsubstantiated claims about COVID and election fraud as the two main sources of misinformation. But what misinformation about COVID? Is it the changing information I think all of us experienced? And what about election fraud? Which election and which fraud? There's no consideration that there might be legitimate mistrust in government because, for example, people in the Senate and Congress own shares in companies which profit from bills that they legislate. How about getting rid of that? People are not trustworthy. New bulletin. Everything's terrorism now. How about creating an environment where trusting the government makes sense? The bulletin marks an extraordinary escalation of the war on speech in the First Amendment. These public statements are not merely wallpaper. They can reflect secret government decisions about what police or intelligence tactics are acceptable against target groups. This is not a conspiracy theory. In 2017, Central Intelligence Agency Director Mike Pompeo publicly called WikiLeaks a non-state hostile intelligence service.
WikiLeaks. I love WikiLeaks.
Cool bit of language, but what WikiLeaks are actually doing is revealing information that the government weren't amenable to. Luckily, the people involved in WikiLeaks have been treated fairly and justly. As Yahoo News reported 3 years later, more than just a provocative talking point, the designation opened the door for agency operatives to take far more aggressive actions, treating the organisation as it does adversary spy services. So the language is a convenient way of repositioning an organisation so it can be treated either as a spy agency in this case, or in the case of language that says that misinformation is terror, we're on our journey to treating people that convey what is regarded as misinformation as terrorists. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was asked by reporters last month about the connection between misinformation and what the Department of Home Security classifies as domestic extremism. Mayorkas said his agency was seeing a great connectivity between misinformation and false narratives propagated on social media and the threat landscape, and that false narratives about stolen election have an impact on the threat landscape. This new lexicon of magical language is like a series of lily pads that lead you to prison. This is misinformation. What, like when Facebook banned the BMJ from publishing stuff all of which was proven to be true? Yeah, misinformation, stuff we don't agree with. And misinformation can lead to terrorism on the threat landscape. What's the threat landscape? Stuff we don't like you doing. So misinformation is stuff we don't like you saying. The threat landscape is stuff we don't like you doing, and terrorism is whatever the fuck we say it is. Federal law enforcement has been waging a public relations fight against strong encryption which protects digital communications from outside surveillance for years. So they want to know what we're talking about. We've done episodes with Edward Snowden. You know that what they want is your information. What the government wants is control. What the corporate world wants is money. What both of them want is power. What neither of them care about is you.
Questions and confusion swirling about a new advisory board within the Department of Homeland Security designed to combat disinformation. The Disinformation Governance Board was created in April, but lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have questions about its leadership and what the board is actually meant to accomplish. Some GOP members are even calling for the group to be disbanded.
Really quite ferocious, it's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice or vote. Oh, information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origin seems slightly less atrocious. Woo!
policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the
to
problem.
ensure-
We
if I
can't
may,
even
this is
agree.
an
We can't even
extremely-
agree what disinformation is.
This is-
You
well-
can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media? I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction?
Saddam Hussein has gone to elaborate lengths, spent enormous sums, taken great risks to build and keep weapons of mass destruction.
Saddam Hussein is determined to get his hands on a nuclear bomb.
Nuclear weapon, nuclear weapon, nuclear weapon.
Active chemical munitions bunkers, mobile production facilities.
We know he's got chemical weapons. He's got them, he's got them, he's got them.
Are you familiar with Iran-Contra?
You know who I am, Mr. Seal?
No, ma'am.
I'm Dana Sabota, State Attorney General. You've got DEA, ATF, FBI, all wanting their pound of flesh.
Yes, ma'am. It's quite a room.
Yeah. Well, you hit the trifecta, didn't you? I mean, guns, drugs, money laundering. And the state of Arkansas is gonna rip the bark right off of you, boy. We are gonna put you in a 4x6 cell for the rest of your life.
Man, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Miss Sabota, I have Governor Clinton on the line. He says it's urgent.
Governor. Mr. Governor.
Put him through. Clear the room, take him with you. Yeah. What do you need, Bill?
Did y'all know that caddies have more trunk space than any other car in the world? I'll get each and every one of you a caddy. Huh?
You do that for all of us?
Yes, sir, I would. I'll get all y'all caddies. Have them here this afternoon.
What are you trying to do, Seal? Add another 20 for bribery?
Oh, no. I'm just offering y'all caddies for your troubles.
What trouble, Seal?
Well, bring me down here for one. See, I'm gonna walk out of here. I'm gonna walk out of here. There ain't a damn thing any one of you can do about it.
Do it.
Wait a minute, huh?
No, he's free to go, boys.
What the hell you mean he's free to
You
go?
want to explain what's going on here?
He's free to go.
Free to go? You boys should have taken the caddies.
I'll be seeing you, Seal.
Ma'am? I tell you, it is good to see you boys. I ain't gonna lie. But I figured you'd have to show up, see? I just know too much. Schaefer sent you, right?
Who the fuck is Schaefer?
I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Saddam Hussein has gone to elaborate lengths, spent enormous sums, taken great risks to build and keep weapons of mass destruction.
Saddam Hussein is determined to get his hands on a nuclear bomb.
Nuclear weapon, nuclear weapon, nuclear weapon.
Active chemical munitions bunkers, mobile production facilities.
We know he's got chemical weapons. He's got them, he's got them, he's got them.
In contrast, Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway, 75.
Julian Assange battles extradition to the United States. Is he a journalist doing his job or a criminal, as the US government contends? And what does it mean for freedom of the press and whistleblowers? Julian Assange's legal team appealed to the British High Court to block his extradition to the United States. Assange is wanted by the US on charges that include spying after WikiLeaks released confidential US military records and diplomatic cables. Julian Assange's website, WikiLeaks, came to international attention in 2010 when it published a series of almost 500,000 documents, mainly relating to the US wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Authorities say Assange broke the law and endangered lives.
We have an active, ongoing criminal investigation with regard to this matter.
The United States launched a criminal investigation. The 51-year-old took refuge at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. During the 2016 US presidential campaign, just months before the November election, WikiLeaks published confidential emails from the Democratic Party showing that Hillary Clinton was being favored by the National Committee over her rival Bernie Sanders. The CIA concluded that Russian intelligence hacked the Democratic Party servers and provided the data to WikiLeaks.
You see, this is where things get so extreme, because this is where the politicization of Julian comes into play. The DNC being against him, and this Russian connection that they're so desperate to link him to Donald Trump, and by doing so, they'll be able to prevent Trump from running again in 2024.
Russia has rejected the hacking allegations, and Assange says there is no proof. In 2019, Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno said that Assange had violated the terms of asylum and allowed the British police to arrest him based on a US extradition warrant.
After, ironically, the US was successful in doing what it's accusing Russia of doing in 2016, in that it influenced heavily the Ecuadorian election, which ousted the president that supported Assange's asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy and put in place a vassal state US figurehead that was all too happy to give him up, as well as his natural resources, like all the other vassal states do. If you don't know what a vassal state is, look it up. It's basically a puppet state.
Assange is wanted by US authorities on 18 counts, including spying and federal conspiracy charges.
Free Julian Assange!
His defenders around the world say he was doing journalism, exposing the wrongdoings of government.
Say that what Assange did was what journalists do. He exposed malfeasance, crimes committed by a government. How do you see the Assange case?
Oh, I don't think that Julian Assange revealed any sources and methods. I think that Julian's crime was embarrassing the powers that be in Washington. You know, one of the red herrings that the federal government uses in every one of these cases is they say that sources and methods were revealed and that the lives of either American diplomats or our war fighters serving overseas were placed in danger. They did say that with Julian, but could never offer any proof, just like they couldn't offer proof with Ed Snowden or with Chelsea Manning. So I don't believe that there was any damage to the national security. I don't think that we should take seriously American accusations that there was damage to the national security. And to respond to your second point, I think that there isn't any question at all that Julian Assange is a journalist. Even if you don't believe that he's a journalist, you have to acknowledge that he's a publisher, and he should have the same rights that any journalist or publisher has.
Max Blumenthal, is Julian Assange effectively a political prisoner, or is he, as we've heard over and over again, a criminal, a man who stole documents?
Well, if you believe that Julian Assange would still potentially be a free man or might even enjoy some more vocal support from the U.S. government or from the corporate U.S. media, which dominates U.S. airwaves, because he had not embarrassed the Democratic Party by publishing factual emails showing corruption within the party to destroy the candidacy of Bernie Sanders or the corruption surrounding John Podesta and so on, if he hadn't been blamed by Hillary Clinton for her defeat to one of the most beatable candidates in recent history, then he's certainly a prisoner of U.S. partisan politics, but he also appears to be a prisoner of the U.S. national security state. That's almost clear. That's clearly established by the fact that the espionage case against him has fallen apart in broad daylight. We've seen Siggy Thordarson, the lead Justice Department witness against Assange, exposed as a child sex predator who is seeking to negotiate a way out of his own prosecution by lying about Julian Assange, instructing Chelsea Manning to steal documents. We have seen again and again the case fall apart where over 30 former CIA officers have come forward to confirm my reporting that the CIA had plotted to assassinate Julian Assange under the watch of Mike Pompeo, which would have been a political assassination of someone who, as John Kiriakou pointed out, was not only a publisher, but a journalist with a 100% record of accuracy. So in my opinion, he absolutely is a political prisoner, and the U.S. press could easily make a drumbeat for for freeing him, but it chooses not to.
But Max, this goes beyond merely embarrassing US officials, because if we look at what Julian Assange revealed and told us, these were very serious crimes, people being killed, massacred, murdered. Has anyone ever been held accountable for those crimes?
Yeah, well, Julian Assange has shown that a CIA snatched him and tortured and sodomized in a CIA black site in a case of mistaken identity, and then was just let go. If it weren't for Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, we wouldn't even know about this case. There are so many cases like it. You also have Cablegate, where we saw the State Department engaging in illegal activity in sovereign countries to topple their governments, training opposition figures that we saw through the Stratfor cables exposed on WikiLeaks, training opposition figures like Juan Guaido and his mentor Leopoldo Lopez to overthrow the Venezuelan government, plotting to sabotage dams inside Venezuela to help overthrow Hugo Chavez. The list goes on and on and on. These are details few journalists even know, and that's why I think they're after Assange and are seeking to kill him in slow motion by prolonging his imprisonment for as long as possible.
This is what Assange's lawyer said after the British government, the right-wing British government, which is a strong ally of the United States, decided that he will be extradited to the United States. Let's listen to his lawyer.
This decision is a grave threat to freedom of speech, not just for Julian, but for every journalist and editor and media worker in this country. He faces 175 years in prison for publishing information for which he's won journalism awards the world over and has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange!
Again, I can't overstate the importance of speaking to your congresspeople about Julian Assange. I can't overstate the importance of your future based on the outcome of this case, your children's future. This is the First Amendment. So if nobody says anything, nobody gives a shit or fights for it, they're going to take it, and when they take something, they don't take it back. That is proven. Whenever they take away a civil liberty, we don't get it back. So speak up, make yourself aware of what's going on, and stay tuned to next week's episode of the Post-War Show.
Julian Assange! Julian Assange! Julian Assange!